Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine war geopolitical news live update. I was speaking to Benny Pie just a few minutes ago on the back channel saying, should I do a live? I think I do too many lives. And he was like, we had a chat about that and he was like, yeah, go for it. And I'm like, I don't want to overburden people with too many lives, but sometimes they're actually easier for me to do lives and a bit quicker for me to get lots of information out rather than pre-records and whatnot. And actually, I just like doing a live and having a chat to you guys. So here I am doing a live and chat to you guys. And change of glasses, it gives an opportunity to have some, community get together and whatnot. So happy days. Here I am. Thanks, Paul. You can never do too many lives. I don't know. I do feel that I can, and I just don't want to do that. But anyway, right. So here we go. We are going to talk about all the geopolitical shenanigans, comings and goings in the world concerning the war in Ukraine, and we might touch on general US political updates as well, because I've got some stuff to talk about, so deal with it. I hope you are all well in the live chat. Thank you very much for joining, and I'm going to go first of all to Germany, actually. So let's just move things sideways a little bit. There we go. So senior German officials have accused the far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD party, of deliberately abusing parliamentary powers to collect and likely pass secret information about the country's military capabilities and the state of critical infrastructure to Russia. The source here is Der Spiegel. That is pretty controversial. It's incredible that we see more and more obvious, I think, connections to the populist right, particularly in and around Europe. There is the connection to the populist left as well, but as I often mention to you, the populist left doesn't really have much of a purchase in Europe, so you kind of don't need to worry about it. But the populist right does. It's growing in Europe, is becoming more and more of a political force. And the worry is that actually this allows Russia to have more and more influence in European political mechanisms and processes in our elections. The interference is there. And we are seeing this. I just received my Byline Times magazine because I now sign up to Byline Times trying to support independent journalism and whatnot. And their magazine that they send, I think, once a month, it has some really fascinating articles on, which are available on the Byline Times website, on the connection between Reform UK and Russia. And I was like, I'm frustrating. I was saying it this morning, I think, to Mark from the Little Whiskey Shop, but why are these not made into documentaries? Why is there not a panorama documentary on the BBC about the connections between Nigel Farage, Nathan Gill, Reform UK and Russia? In the same way, in Germany, there should be documentaries on television about the connections between AfD and Russia, because these are matters of national security interest. They, we are going into elections not equipped with the requisite information to make our votes to vote. Then, there's something wrong there. So let's go and look now at the Euromaidan Press's interpretation of what's going on here. So Der Spiegel: Germany's AfD lawmakers suspected of feeding sensitive Bundeswehr data to Russian intelligence. CDU, so that's a ruling party in Germany in coalition with the SPD, are demanding answers after the AfD submitted detailed and structured parliamentary requests, which officials say resemble coordinated intelligence gathering. So it's all very controversial in terms of, it looks very suspicious. That's a better word. Lawmakers from Germany's pro-Russian far-right party AfD are facing accusations of gathering sensitive data that may benefit Russian or Chinese interests, according to Der Spiegel, with officials citing close ties to both countries. The accusations focus on the party's series of unusually detailed and patterned parliamentary requests into Bundeswehr capabilities and infrastructure. This comes amid the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian war, as Moscow continues to support Eurosceptic parties spanning both the far right and far left. Russia frequently provides covert funding to these political forces, while its propaganda machinery promotes them in hopes of bringing such allies to power in their respective countries and undermining support for Ukraine. In Germany's latest parliamentary elections, the AfD came in second with 20.8%, doubling its 2021 result of 10.4%. So it's, that should be concerning enough. So the Bundestag, the German parliament, then clash over these espionage allegations. Der Spiegel reported that in the German parliament, the Bundestag, the ruling coalition's parties have demanded explanations from AfD lawmakers following what they describe as disturbing intelligence gathering behavior masked as routine oversight. CDU parliamentary leader Jens Spahn confronted AfD chair Alice Weidel with the claim that the suspicion of, quote, working as elected representatives on behalf of hostile powers in parliament is among the gravest that can exist. And Spahn warns that Weidel's silence could make her, quote, at least complicit in potential treason. I mean, that is a pretty significant accusation there. Okay, so SPD and CDU legislators called for an emergency debate to address the effects of AfD's relations with Russia on Germany's security interests. Thomas Roverkamp, head of the Bundestag Defense Committee, told Der Spiegel that AfD lawmakers had submitted a large number of systematically structured and very detailed inquiries into military capabilities and gaps. Roverkamp stressed that the content and frequency of these requests went far beyond standard parliamentary interest and instead appeared, quote, targeted and grid-like in their collection of military sensitive information. Some of the inquiries submitted by AfD MPs included precise questions about drone defense, military logistics, Bundeswehr procurement schedules, and even gaps in cybersecurity at various ministries. Wow. I mean, honestly, that would strike me as pretty odd if the AfD suddenly came up with these requests. There's no wonder that the CDU and the SPD have been somewhat suspicious. According to Der Spiegel, one parliamentary request asked the Interior Ministry to detail how many data centers it operates and how many of them have long-term emergency power supplies. What? Other requests focused on the cyber readiness of the digital, transport, finance, and defense ministries. High-ranking military officials and leadership in the defense ministry are alarmed. According to Der Spiegel, multiple ministries came to the same conclusion. The nature of AfD's questions suggests intentional efforts to identify structural weaknesses. Some government analysts believe the questions reflect coordination, possibly based on requests from abroad, targeting both current defense capabilities and planned upgrades. Thuringia's interior minister, so Thuringia is a region of Germany that has very strong AfD presence. Interior Minister George Meyer warned that the AfD appeared to be working through a task list from the Kremlin and said that the party had long been misusing parliamentary tools to probe critical infrastructure. Roverkamp echoed this assessment, linking the inquiries to what he called hybrid attacks against Germany, likely meant to support Russian strategic goals. We have long known that there are demonstrably close connections between the AfD and Russia and China, Meyer told Der Spiegel. Der Spiegel recalled a 2021 case it had previously uncovered in which a Chinese Ministry of State security agent bragged about using contacts to launch a Bundestag inquiry to Hong Kong through AfD lawmaker Stefan Koiter, who denied any cooperation with Chinese intelligence. So this has happened before. Literally, the AfD have formed for this with regard to China. So honestly, quite incredible. If there are any Germans in the live chat, I'd be interested to see how this is being played in the media spaces in Germany. Like, how is this going down? Is AfD generally thought to be kind of complicit here with the Russians? Let me know if you are German and in the chat. Right, we are going to move on now to kind of the headline bit of news, which is going to concerns Orban, Viktor Orban, the autocratic dictator wannabe from Hungary, having a meeting with Donald Trump, the autocratic dictator wannabe from the United States. Trump will meet Orban at the White House today. according to The Guardian, Orban wants Trump to come to Budapest before elections next year and help win them. Wow, that's interesting. So one of the things that Orban will no doubt bring to the table in terms of meeting Trump today is a request that Trump comes to Budapest to help Orban campaign. To I guess it's about bringing the US president comes here to meet us. Look how powerful I am that I can get Trump to come to Budapest, and we can, I can show you how powerful I am through my association with Donald Trump. Orban's offer is a number of deals, including Hungary's purchase of $600 million in liquefied natural gas and nuclear fuel from the US. So he can maybe. So here's the thing: if I was Viktor Orban, right, what is the number one thing? So if you're an autocratic leader, what's the number one thing you want to happen? Remain in power. So either Russia gives him the ability to remain in power, or the US gives him the ability to remain in power, and he's probably not all that bothered which one. So I wonder if there is an element. I mean, this is just me. I'm spitballing. This is why we do these lives, actually, because I probably wouldn't spitball like this on a pre-record. I'm wondering whether Viktor Orban is totally fine with dumping on Russia in terms of hydrocarbon exports, buys the US stuff if the US can get Orban over the line. So Viktor Orban says, yeah, no, we will stop buying Russian hydrocarbons. We will start buying American liquefied natural gas, and we will get stuff through the Druzhba pipeline. We will get stuff through the Croatian pipeline. If that's what you want me to do, as long as you come to Budapest, you campaign for me to the hilt, and you get me over the line. You do all the things that you can do to get me over the line. You can pull all the levers internationally, Trump. I'm going to reject Russian interference, and I want American interference. And Trump probably wouldn't have an issue interfering. He did it in Argentina just now. We're going to give you $40 billion of bailout assistance, but we'll only give that to you if you vote for Milei. Oh, look, Milei got voted in. Who knew when the polls were looking like he was not going to succeed? And suddenly you put that threat there, and then Milei succeeds. Trump then says, well, look, if you don't vote for Viktor Orban, we won't give you X, Y, and Z. I wonder. Anyway, right, let's get back to where we were. So Trump is meeting Orban. Orban is meeting Trump. Trump wants to convince Orban to lift the veto on Ukraine's EU accession, according to the Atlantic Council. This has long been recognized, actually. Trump, rather against what you might predict of him, because he's kind of anti-EU. He's not really bothered about the EU improving. Maybe he sees Ukraine getting into the EU as weakening the EU. I don't know. But he really wants Ukraine in the EU. I think, I would imagine if I was Trump, I would want to be isolationist, because that's my way. It's a kind of Heritage Foundation way. So I guess it's a case of saying, look, we can much more easily walk away from Ukraine without having to do anything if Ukraine is protected by Europe, by the EU. And Ukraine is better able to be protected by the EU if it's in the EU, because the EU acts as its own security guarantee. And so it's a case that Ukraine needs to accede to the EU in order to allow the US to pull out of European NATO forces, pull their forces out of Europe. You guys are now sorted in Ukraine. You don't need us there. We're going to pull out. You guys get on with your stuff. We don't need to help Ukraine nearly as much. We don't need to bother so much, because this is your problem. So I think if Trump can facilitate Ukraine joining the EU, he can then extract the US out of Europe. I'm guessing, again, this is my just spitballing speculation. So that parties will probably discuss Ukraine's European integration. So, sorry, the point being that if Viktor Orban is vetoing that, if he's the obstacle, then Trump can sell LNG and American hydrocarbons to Hungary, get them stopping buying Russian stuff, go and do some campaigning and pull some levers, maybe in social media and in media in general, to get Orban voted in. And at the same time, Ukraine gets to accede to the EU and the US can walk away from Europe. So the parties will probably discuss Ukraine's European integration and Orban's role in that process. So there. Right, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has, though, reiterated just now his opposition to Ukraine's accession, so a couple of days ago, to the European Union, proposing instead a strategic partnership without full membership. Now, Zelensky's come out and publicly repudiated this plan. So he's like, no, Zelensky effectively said the other day, if we're going to have membership, it has to be full membership. This kind of tiered membership is not good enough. So Zelensky's been very strong on that. Orban also criticized Zelensky, alleging that Hungarian funds are being directed towards Ukraine, which is nothing unusual. Then you've had Peter Szijjártó, the foreign minister for Hungary, saying that Hungary's current government will not allow Ukraine to join the EU. So this is definitely some kind of a challenge there, and that hopefully Trump is up for solving. Okay, then we've had US senators calling on Hungary to stop buying Russian oil ahead of Orban's meeting with Trump. This is according to Bloomberg. The document notes that Budapest, quote, has shown no signs of reducing its dependence on Russian fossil fuels. The senators called on Viktor Orban to follow the EU's plan to phase out imports by 2027. So the headline here is senators hit Hungary over Russian oil before the Trump-Orban meeting. So that's good to see pressure from US senators. That's kind of what they should be doing. Of course, Congress has been rendered impotent really since the beginning. In fact, I was going to talk to you about this later in the American section, but actually it's worth bringing in this chart now. Where is it? Here. I think this is absolutely fascinating, this chart. So this is a chart or a graph charting the number of executive orders during Biden, Trump 1, and Bush and Obama. So the first days in office, so this is your first term. So Biden only had one term, so it stops there. Trump's first term, he was like pretty standard. He started having more executive orders towards the end as he got a bit emboldened and wanting to, I guess, embrace the unified executive theory, which is this idea that you can kind of unify the judiciary, the Congress, and the executive, which is the White House. You can extract powers away or take powers away from Congress and the judiciary in order to have those powers yourself by unilaterally proclaiming things, by saying. So recently he was talking about, burning the American flag and you're going to go to prison for 1 year. Well, no, that's the judiciary gets to decide that. You don't get to decide the sentencing there. That's just an example of unified executive theory in kind of in progress, where he's just coming up with these executive orders, deciding on the law. So this is the law. You can't burn flags. Well, what about the First Amendment and the freedom of speech? No, you can't burn flags. And if you do, you're going to go to prison for 1 year. Congress has been doing basically nothing. This is, I think, one of the worst sessions of Congress in history, as they've been doing nothing. And then now the government's shut down. Meanwhile, he's just whacking out these executive orders, and he doesn't even know what they are because he's being told what they are, because actually he's being run by people like Russ Vought and Stephen Miller. So this graph tells you the story, because Trump 2.0 comes along and it's gone exponential, like properly exponential. Just look at how many executive orders he is churning out. And so, yeah, absolutely insane. So, to go back to Congress, this is what Congress should be doing, but they haven't been doing it because Trump has basically just ignored them and is ruling by individual fiat at the moment. Anyway, rant over. Well, not really rant, but there you go. So just Patrick Carlson says, hi all, I had no idea that would be alive today. Nice surprise. Nor did I. I didn't know there was going to be alive till 10 minutes ago. So until I randomly decided. So sorry about that. I'm not very good at letting people know. Hungary's only oil refiner, Molnert, can switch to non-Russian crude oil for up to 80% of its needs via the Croatian pipeline if the Druzhba flows stop. Bloomberg has also reported, citing the company's earnings statements. This is really good news that actually Hungary keeps complaining about being a landlocked nation. That's the excuse that Viktor Orban has taken to Trump. Said, well, look, we can't get any hydrocarbons from anywhere else. So we need to keep buying Russian. Meanwhile, Croatia's going, hello, no, hello, hi, we're here. We can do that. We can do that. So anyway, they can do that, and it's just Viktor Orban coming up with a load of bunkum. Right. Okay. Moving on to Czechia. Yes. So before this, the last Congress was the worst, continuous and increasing decline in irrelevance. So this is a good point, Viggo. So during Biden's administration, of course, it was basically rendered useless, but not by Biden, is by themselves not being able to agree on anything. And as the Congress has become hyper partisan, as it's become less and less working across the aisle. So just let's have a bit of a sidebar here, because actually I think this is worth this is worth talking about, Viggo. So at the moment, the big beautiful bill has been introduced, and it's going to strip away all sorts of stuff and strip funding from all sorts of places, like, for example, Medicaid and Medicare, Obamacare, and people's healthcare premiums are going to go through the roof. And so because both parties can't agree on this, the government is shut down. And the agreement for things like this requires what's called a filibuster, which is a vote. Instead of a 50-50 vote, it's a 60 vote. And for there to be a vote of 60 people in agreement with big beautiful bill or the budget, then you need some people from the other party, because it's very rare that one party gets sort of 60 plus senators in power. And this has been designed so that you don't become hyper partisan and just one team gets in and all you need is just 50% of the votes in Senate and you can do whatever you like. You need to have a government that has some kind of crossing the aisle, so you have a bit of moderation. So in Europe, we have proportional representation. We don't in the UK. We've got the same system as America, but we've got a more pluralist political landscape due to the last sort of 20 years. But in Europe, you have very pluralistic political landscape, lots of parties, but you have proportional representation. So no one's ever going to get more than 50%. Well, it rarely happens. Most of the time you have to have working coalitions, and that works to moderate the extremes, right? So it's not too often that you get like complete extreme parties are able to get over 50%. So if you get like the far right, the PVV in the Netherlands, they end up having to go into coalition with other right-wing parties, but they end up moderating them because they aren't so far to the right, and then you get some kind of moderation. So in the American system, I guess the filibuster is a way of trying to moderate the extremes. So you can't get like the Heritage Foundation getting voted in the last election, and then the Republican Party getting voted in the last election, and then the extreme of them just saying, right, now we're in power, we can do what we like, we just need 50% of the votes. So they need to get the filibuster. So now what Trump is saying, and he said this the other morning, he said, right, we got absolutely spanked in the elections on Tuesday, and it was embarrassing. This is when he spoke to the senators behind closed doors, not the bit that was on camera, but behind closed doors. He said, right, we just got killed in the elections. It's not my fault. Of course, it's not my fault because I'm Donald Trump. It's your fault. And actually it's it's inflation and groceries, even though he comes out and says something else, and it's the shutdown. We're shut down because there's a filibuster. We need to get rid of the filibuster. Now, some more kind of MAGA type, shallower maybe politicians who haven't been in the game for a long time are not up for the filibuster for being got rid of, because as soon as you get rid of it for your side, then it works in the other direction for the other side. So the Democrats get in, they only need 50% of votes to get in whatever crazy stuff they want to bring in, says the Republican. So if we get rid of the filibuster, it might be good for us now, but it'll suck in 4 years' time. But the fight is over the filibuster. but in the last administration under Biden, you would just have people not working together. You have, I think, over time in the United States, seen people become more and more, or politicians become more and more actually people in general, country becoming more and more hyper partisan and refusing to cross the aisle and work with the other side. And then if they do that, then they get shunned. And it's becoming really, really tribalistic. So, yeah, I think that wasn't the fault of Biden, but that was a fault of the political movement towards polarization in the United States, which is then now definitely the case. So, yeah, there are different types of filibuster. So you can filibuster in speaking about things and, you know, speak for a long time. So Hakeem Jeffries filibustered recently for however long he did. Yeah. So there, yes. Yeah, so I thought filibuster said that Ed Jones was when someone talked for hours to prevent a vote. Yeah, that is also part of it too. So what Trump is now saying is that he wants the Republicans to get rid of the filibuster. So you'll see a lot of talk about that going forward. Anyway, moving back to Europe, Czechia, their next foreign minister has said the country will focus less on weapons for Ukraine and more on diplomatic efforts and interest-based approach. Turek's appointment signals a possible alignment with Hungary, Politico reports. I think, if I'm correct, Turek is the, and if there's someone from Czechia in the live stream, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's the guy that's in charge of the motorists, who are like a MAGA equivalent. He was himself, like he's quite a bombastic politician, this guy. He's not a career politician as far as I know. And he is going to be their foreign minister. Andrej Babiš is going to be the prime minister. And then you've got, is it the foreign minister, which is Ohimura, who is from the SPD party, which is the far right in Czechia. So you've got basically three parties in coalition who are pretty right. I was talking about how coalitions generally can force there to be a little bit more moderation, but in Czechia at the moment, the actual three parties who are in are like super right wing, populist right wing, and MAGA right wing, and they're all fairly up that end, and they've managed to make a government, which shows you that actually there is quite a large contingent of the Czech political system that is right wing. And in fact, actually one of the main parties in opposition is was that the ANO party? It was centre right, I think. So, you know, there you go. Right. Then we go actually to talk about the foreign minister. So just hours after the Czech parliament, the speaker, not the foreign minister, Tomio Okamura, boasted about removing the Ukrainian flag. 3 new blue and yellow flags appeared on the building. Parties including the ODS, Stan and Pirati. So the Pirate, Stan, which is more of a left-wing party, ODS, can't remember who they are, flew them from their office windows in defiance. So that's great. But it is certainly the case, and there's Okamura there, the SPD leader. It's certainly the case that the Czech government is not obviously fans of Ukraine. So I'm just looking at this, Mitch. Mitch, you might like. I've already done a video. It's recorded. It's ready to go. But I thought I'd do a live first. I've done a whole video on Marjorie Taylor Greene. You said Trump told Marjorie Taylor Greene she can't run for Senate. Is my understanding? Yes, and that partly goes to explain why she's having a complete reinvention at the moment. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, I've done a whole video on how she's reinventing herself. She's on CNN loads. She was on The View, on Bill Maher, and she's saying things that are against the Republican Party and against the Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the Senate. And she is becoming a different person, just seems to be reinventing herself. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is claiming she's doing that because she is on a revenge tour against the GOP because Trump told her she couldn't run for Senate, presumably because she's not serious enough. But on the other hand, you've got a claim that she's also thinking about running for president. Marjorie Taylor Greene thinking about running for president. Anyway, that could be why she's becoming a little bit more sensible at the moment, and a little bit calmer and less kind of batshit crazy in what she is claiming. Anyway, right, let's go on to the next subject, which is, and I talked about this in my hits and losses video, the Treasury Department from the US saying President Trump has been clear that the war must end immediately. As long as Putin continues the senseless killings, the Kremlin's puppet Gunvor will never get a license to operate and profit. In other words, Treasury Department is saying that this Swiss, I think, is it multinational, but any Swiss-based company, Gunvor, which was started by a Putin lackey, is not, well, they don't get to say whether they're allowed to buy the Lukoil assets. Lukoil has been sanctioned by the Treasury Department, as well as Rosneft. Lukoil are trying to sell off their foreign assets. They have been approached by Gunvor to buy those assets, and then the Treasury Department has called Gunvor Kremlin's puppet. And now Gunvor have stepped away and withdrawn their offer to buy those Lukoil assets. So US Treasury is not playing games with the sanctions on Putin, says Igor Sushko. Putin's attempt to evade sanctions by transferring his Lukoil assets to Swiss-based Gunvor, which he also controls, will fail. So there you go. Right, that has happened. Indeed, Bulgaria has planned to nationalize and then sell the Russian oil-owned Lukoil Neftokimburgas refinery, the largest in the Balkans, supplying nearly 80% of the country's fuel. The move comes amid fears of fuel shortages due to the new US sanctions. So this then, I mean, if it's done properly, I presume that is just taking money away from Lukoil, as they, but I guess they might get a bit of a cash, might be a bit of a cash cow. So it might be that Bulgaria nationalizes that, but it depends what the rules are, whether they can force nationalize it for a knockdown price, or I don't know. But it could be that they get a short-term hit of money, Lukoil, but then they stop being able to make money out of refining in Bulgaria and producing 80% of the country's fuel. So this is really significant, and it can end up hurting Russia even more. The big cash cow is their hydrocarbons industry, and it looks like if the sanctions from the US really are managed well on Lukoil and Rosneft, sorry, did I say Neftekhim? Rosneft. If they are managed properly, then that should be good news. Now, Kyiv Independent here reporting that Trump is going to skip the G20 summit in South Africa, dashing hopes of brokering a meeting between Zelensky and Putin. So this is going to be, I'm not going to represent our country there, which is interesting, because we also hear that Sergei Lavrov won't be going there either and representing Russia. There are some claims that Sergei Lavrov has been sidelined as a foreign minister. Don't know whether Putin's going to go there, because, of course, technically he should be arrested because South Africa are signatories to the Rome Statute and therefore are obliged to arrest Putin, because he has an ICC, an International Criminal Court arrest warrant on his head for deportation of children. But there was this hope that at the meeting, certainly Trump and Putin were going to meet, and possibly Zelensky as well. Trump said he's not going. I wonder why. I personally think, I mean, as a fascinating John Gartner, I've asked if he can appear on my channel. I've sent him an email, but I don't know if I'll get a response. So Dr. John Gartner often has interviews concerning Donald Trump's psychological health, and has long said that he's got dementia. And actually, there are a few things he was talking about recently in his Times Radio interview that really do signify that Donald Trump is cognitively in a spot of bother at the moment. There are a number of things that do show this, but I wonder if he doesn't travel to South Africa because he is an older man, like Donald Trump, traveling around the world and having all these high-level meetings. We just saw him in Japan wandering around that room aimlessly. He didn't know where he's going and what he was doing. So it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't going for health reasons. Right. So what else do we have? In addition, Lavrov has lost the status of the head of the delegation of the G20 summit, as I was just saying. He fell out of favor with the collapse of the Putin-Trump summit, according to various Russian media sources. They drew attention to the absence of the foreign minister at yesterday's Security Council. Moreover, he was the only permanent member who missed the landmark meeting. So that could be a pretty important. So just trying to see, oh, we've got a bit of Bulgarian. This is Satellite TV Bulgaria. A scandalous video came out today from the parliament in Bulgaria. I love the fact that we've got people from all over the shop here giving their expertise here. From the parliament in Bulgaria of the decision to nationalize the Burgas refinery. It shows how the conference was scheduled and finished within 30 seconds. I imagine this is like prime real estate for corruption. Like, honestly, as soon as Gunvor were touted as buying up Lukoil assets, I said, without knowing who Gunvor were, I said that I'm sure this is to get Lukoil the best possible deal and to continue making money in some way. And then the Treasury Department came out and pretty much said that, and then Gunvor have pulled away from that. But I imagine, you know, something like this is, you know, you're going to get in Bulgaria all sorts of backhanders and, I don't know, shenanigans taking place. But anyway, back to Russia, we have Sergei Lavrov potentially falling out of favor. I find that pretty interesting. Right, Benny Pie's in the background here, actually, just he's testing out some functionality of the platform I use to do these lives. And he's just having a look at what's going on. Thank you for putting some of these out. So Viggo Holmson says, Orban's excuse has always been infrastructure, not who they source energy from. Sourcing from the US presupposes infrastructure through Europe. Interesting. Like, yeah, it's going to be, I guess it's interesting. It will be interesting to know what kind of compromat Russia might have over Viktor Orban. So that might be a reason why decisions might be made, right? It's the same, exactly the same with Donald Trump and why he keeps favoring Russia over Ukraine in all of these huge decisions. He keeps making these threats, and then 2 week, 2 week, 2 week, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 week. And it's the same with Orban. Orban was quite liberal and Western looking at the very beginning of his rule. Like, he really was. You listen to some of the early things he was saying and compare it to what he says now. Honestly, it's like two different people. And I just think that he's been compromised over time by Russia. So, yeah, you wonder whether that is still something they can hold over him that makes it harder for him to then just switch to getting support from the United States to maintain his rule. Lada Gaga says Trump and the GOP are in a no-win situation if Senate Dems hold the line. Yeah, it's very interesting. Sorry, we're going all over the place here because I'm just looking at a few comments now. So what's interesting with the government shutdown in the United States at the moment is that most of the public still blame, and in fact, it's been increasing. They blame the Republicans and not the Democrats, which is interesting because from a technical point of view, the Democrats have refused to do an agreement. So you could sort of make a case that it is the Democrats' fault that they're shutting down the government. But of course, the Democrats are saying, no, we're looking out for the people, for the electorate, because they're going to get their Medicare, Medicaid premiums go up by 2 to 3 times. So unless we sort out medical care for the electorate, you know, we are not going to agree to this budget. But it turns out that most people, and it could be that most people are not political junkies that are massively well informed. So if the government is shut down without knowing the details of why it's shut down and who's kind of involved and what the rationale from those people might be, you just will automatically blame the government, because especially if they have the president, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, then if the government's shut down, it's their freaking fault. And so what you see is that even though the Dems are holding out and they're continuing to hold out, more and more of the population are blaming the Republicans for this, for the situation, which plays into the Dems' hands, which means that they have some leverage, and you might then get Donald Trump coming out, having spoken with his senators just in the last 24 hours, saying, you know, what do we learn from these terrible, terrible elections that just absolutely did us? You might start seeing the Republicans try and appease the Democrats. You might start seeing them try to do a deal. Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to clean up her image. Very interesting what she's doing. Yep, who's popping? You obviously said that before I said that I've got a video coming out on that, so please check that out. I've got a couple more comments here that I think are worth going through. Viggo Holmson, from a normative point of view, the House of Representatives is supposed to represent the popular vote, while the Senate is supposed to represent the interests of the states. Yeah, and this is also reflected, I don't know if it's purposefully or not, in I guess it is in the 2 years versus 6 years rule of the representatives, so 430 old, however many there are, they rule for every 2 years. So every 2 years they are up for election, which means they're always campaigning and they're always fundraising, whereas senators are up for 6 years, and so they can just concentrate on doing long-term political stuff. And it also means that the representatives, who are much more locally in their district, rather two for a whole state, they're from much smaller districts in a city or township or wherever, and they therefore need to be voted by the people in that district, which means they will represent those people, but it means they have to appeal to those people. So in order to get voted in, I need to know what these people want and what they need. And so representatives are very much more about kind of the popular vote in that sense, about the people where they live, whereas senators are, you know, 2 senators per state, and yeah, it is slightly different in that way. Lada Gaga, I think MTG had a Damascus moment after spending time with the Epstein victims. I think that would certainly play a role. And just finally here, Lada is also correct. After listening to the Epstein victims, she changed her tune. What's in those files might be much worse than people for Trump than people think. I think there could be an element of that, but I think it's also just that the Republican Party are holding up the Epstein files in a very, very overt way. So the government shutdown is arguably partly or largely even because of the Epstein files. They do not want the Epstein files published, and the government shutdown means that Mike Johnson will not swear in the Arizona 7th District newly elected, is it Grijalva, representative, who has won a special election there, and she would be the one vote that tips the discharge petition to 218 votes. And that is, as a discharge petition, would mean that, as far as I understand, the Epstein files will be published. And so actually shutting down the government and giving Mike Johnson an excuse not to swear in, it's been something like 6 to almost 7 weeks that she hasn't been sworn in. She was voted in 6 or 7 weeks ago and cannot represent her district yet because Mike Johnson will not swear her in. He can swear her in even given there's a government shutdown, but he refuses to and uses a government shutdown as an excuse. So I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, from a general moral point of view of having spoken to the victims, understands that the Republicans are working hard to shut down the Epstein files. And she knows that it's not so much that Trump's in them, but I genuinely don't think Trump is implicated in them in any big serious way. Like, I think there are probably images of him with topless people sitting on his lap and all that kind of stuff that we know those images exist. But it's more to do with the GOP funding. Like, there are donors who are in the Epstein files and who are implicated, I would argue. And it is why I think there are Republican donors that are pulling the strings in American politics at the moment to get the Epstein files shut down. So some of the funding for people who ran the funding for the adverts that were run against Kentucky Thomas Massey, who's one of the 4 Republicans. You got Nancy Mace, who interestingly is having some psychological issues at the moment. She appears to be not well. So you can go and follow all the news on there. If you want to look up Nancy Mace, she doesn't seem to be in a good place, but she's one of the 4. You've got Lauren Boebert, who is batshit crazy, but at least she's there. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene, who up until the last couple of weeks was being batshit crazy, is now marginally less than. and Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey's the only man. Now, he is the main guy with Ro Khanna, who's written this discharge petition. Thomas Massey, back in Kentucky, has been campaigned against by the Republican Party to get him ousted, to get people running against him in primaries so that he is not voted back in. Who is paying for all that? One of the donors to the Republican Party is paying for all of those ads against Thomas Massey. Why him? Because he's in the Epstein files. He is one of the names in the Epstein files. So, join the dots, follow the money. So I think it's not so much that Trump is going to suffer from the Epstein files being published. I think he will a bit, but I think essentially big donors and big players in the Republican Party infrastructure will suffer. And that is almost just as impactful, because these are the people that pay for the Republican Party, that fund it. So there you go. Anyway, that was all a bit of a sidebar, so I better get back to it now. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte: Russia is not alone in its efforts to undermine global rules. It is working with China, North Korea, Iran, others, strengthening defense industrial cooperation to unprecedented levels and preparing for long-term confrontation. We cannot be naive. We must be prepared. This is really true. I think, there are a number of different people. Rasmussen, the NATO Secretary General, the former NATO Secretary General, as I showed you on my hits and losses video this morning, was just on BBC Newsnight expounding the virtues of having NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine, in the western Ukraine, protecting population centers and critical infrastructure. He's saying that all the time that NATO waits to do things until a ceasefire, is that just acts as a motivation for Putin not to have a ceasefire. Putin's not going to come to the table and agree to a ceasefire if NATO are saying, well, when there's a ceasefire, we will put troops in Ukraine. Well, then there won't be a ceasefire, says Putin. So Rasmussen is saying quite rightly that NATO need to be a bit more ballsy and put some troops in the to the west of Ukraine, and not on the front line, but NATO needs to have a presence in Ukraine. I completely agree with that. But of course, NATO is an organization of a lot of member states, including Hungary and including the United States, and they would never agree to that. So yeah, it is a bit of an issue, that. Okay. Russia's defense minister Belousov has stated that he considers it advisable to begin immediate preparations for nuclear tests at the Novaya Zemlya test site. You have noticed that everyone's talking nukes now. So Trump's always been worried by nukes. He doesn't like nukes, but he has also just come out and said, we are going to do nuclear testing. Now, I've seen some analysis that suggests that he's not actually really up for that, but he feels a bit forced to, because Russia are saber rattling and saying they're testing nukes. You've got China soon enough going to be having as many nukes as the US. You've got Russia talking about their air-launched missile that went 14,000 kilometers, and you've got the Poseidon kind of torpedo missile thing that is going to be kind of a big nuke that can do all sorts of damage. And I think there's a lot of saber rattling that has led to Trump agreeing to have an actual nuclear test somewhere in the US. I don't think he wants that. I think it's pretty controversial, but there's a lot of saber rattling going on. Okay. Euromaidan Press says that 9 European research centers have just coined a term for Russia's future, and it's called Iranization. It means permanent sanctions, stagnation, and increasing dependence on China. Isolation is no longer temporary, it's the system itself. So you've got a bit of a challenge here. There's a challenge for Russia not for Russia. I mean, it is a challenge for Russia, but it's a challenge for the international community. So 2014 came along, and Russia did their little green man and annexed Crimea and some of the Donbass. And the world kind of reacted underwhelmingly, but they did sanction Russia quite heavily in a number of ways. But Russia adapted to the sanctions, and then the war evolved in 2022, and you had this new iteration. And then the international community went really hard on Russia. But Russia has this resilience and propensity to adapt to pretty horrible situations. And because there's an iron grip over the population in terms of freedoms, and it's not a democracy, there's not a lot that people can do because you'll just get locked up in a gulag. And what you're looking at seeing is that Russia might well just become even more of an Iran. So Iran has been sanctioned to the hilt, a bit like North Korea, and they just go into this kind of isolated situation where they do business with China and the ne'er-do-wells of the world, but the kind of the Western world isolates them, but they still survive in this form. And it then isn't this temporary thing where we're going to punish you temporarily, because what happens is they get Iranized, and then that's their new form, and they can exist just about fine enough, thank you very much, in this kind of isolated new kind of system. And that's what is being, I think, talked about here, which is isolation is no longer temporary, it's the system itself. Something to think about. Euromide Impress here again says Europe can match Russian military power by 2030 if Ukraine holds the line. New IFRI analysis has revealed there are critical gaps. 20 of the 30 European nations field fewer than 15,000 troops each. The continent has the money and technology. The problem is ammunition stockpiles, missile production, described as dire, and ground forces unable to match Russian mass. Right now, Ukrainian resistance is Europe's primary deterrent. This is a really good point. And actually, when you look at long-range missile production, Germany and the UK understand about this. If you saw my military aid video the other day, there's a lot of talk of, trying to get this 2,000 kilometer missile up and running between the UK and Germany. And then the UK has put out to tender cheap, I don't know, the ballistic or cruise or both, missile production to try and essentially react to what's going on in the war in Ukraine, and understand that, hey, Russia's got all these missiles, although they've used up an awful lot. But, what is Europe doing itself? And the answer is, well, not enough and not quickly enough. And at the moment, Ukraine are the barrier to issues coming westwards into Europe. And Ukraine are the ones that are building these missiles at scale and super quickly. But it's interesting. I was seeing a Thomas Tyner thread reacting to someone else complaining that the British artillery, we've given all our AS-90 self-propelled howitzers to Ukraine. We're getting these Boxer howitzers, RCH-155s coming in, but towed howitzers, we've got freaking hardly any of them. Like Britain's, but the UK is supposed to have this, really powerful armed forces. We spend one of the most in the world on our armed forces, but actually, when you look at the amount of kit we've got, it's freaking nothing. We've got the Ajax infantry fighting vehicle that's coming online now. This week it's been announced, 8 years too late. It's 8 years late. So, like, as far as kit's concerned, like, the British is a great example of how shit we are compared to where we should be, given what's going on the edges of Europe. Two pillars prevent Russian assaults on the Euro-Atlantic territory: NATO unity, so how important NATO is, and Ukraine's fight. If either erodes, quote, the risk of armed confrontation between Russia and Europe would increase considerably. Ukraine buys Europe time it's not using effectively. Right now, Ukrainian resistance is Europe's primary deterrent. And it's a pretty good analysis there. Okay, just to let you know. Thank you, Clive. Great content this afternoon, JP. Very informative. A great deal of food for thought. Thank you. That means a lot. Appreciate that. The European Commission has banned the issuance of multi-entry Schengen visas. I've talked about this a lot this week to Russian citizens. Is now sort of happening. From now on, they'll need to apply for new single-entry visa each time they travel to the EU, a move aimed at tightening security checks and minimizing risks across Europe. This should have been done in 2022, to be perfectly honest. This is long overdue, but I'm glad it's happened. As Zelensky has said, quote, today, Ukraine was elected to the UNESCO Executive Board for 2025 to 2029 with the largest number of votes. Together with Romania and Moldova, we are ahead of Russia. For the second time in a row, Moscow has lost the elections and will not be included in the board. I love that. This is awesome. Yeah, good meme. So good stuff there. The Ukrainian border guards have gifted Angelina Jolie. So this is great. And I'm a really big fan of this. Like, it's all about public consciousness. Support for Ukraine will not exist if people don't know about or people aren't reminded about Ukraine, right? So it needs to be in the news. Now, I bet cynically that actually this story probably hasn't featured in mainstream media, and if it has, not nearly enough. But I think this should be right on CNN and Fox News, big time. Angelina Jolie, one of the big Hollywood superstars, has gone to Kherson. There's pictures of her under drone nets, all helmeted up, apparently not concerned. Like, pretty brave. Like, Kherson is not an easy place to go to. I wouldn't go there now, and I'm a nobody. Angelina Jolie, she's big name Hollywood star, goes to Kherson and is concerned about Ukrainian children. And this is really, really good. So the Ukrainian border guards have gifted her with a set of national symbols and a DPSU coin as a token of gratitude. She said she continues to call on the world to support displaced people and those suffering from the war's impact. Good. As someone says, kudos to her for her efforts. Right. I have shared this a fair bit. So this is one of my pet concerns of the world. And this is something that we're going to need to come to terms with in a much more robust manner now, like right now. It's the influence, and I was talking to Mark from the Little Whiskey Shop. We don't agree politically. I sit on centre left, he sits centre right, and he's like attacking Labour, and I'm kind of defending them, but I'm defending them from a point of, in the UK, all of our print media, all bar the Guardian and the Mirror, are right wing. Right, so something like 9 mainstream media, print media outlets are right wing, and 2 with tiny readerships are left wing. Our TV broadcast media, GB News has now overtaken BBC News. GB News is a startup Fox News copy, and I think a couple of months ago it had more views than BBC, which is absolutely incredible. And you've got Talk TV, so they come along. They are massive. GB News is the megaphone for Reform UK, and you have Sky News and BBC skewing more and more to the right. So if you look at, I watched BBC Question Time last night, and Fiona Bruce on that gave the former Conservative Energy Minister something like 2 to 3 times as much talking time as the serving Labour Minister. You're like, what's going? You're just letting him talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And she hardly says anything. Now, maybe she should be more forthright. Maybe she should be trying to speak more. But from a position of hosting, there, and Reform UK keep getting on BBC Question Times. They keep getting platformed. There are loads of complaints. Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, who have 72 MPs, Reform have 5 MPs. 72 MPs, and Lib Dems never feature anywhere. They're never on. They're hardly ever on Question Time. Reform are on there every bleeding week. Or if they're not, then they're on Laura Kuenssberg on Sunday, or they're over here, they're over there. Then I was like, why is this that the BBC's doing that? Now, we know that the BBC is trying to court Reform voters and people who are refusing to pay licence fees. So there is that element. There's also a guy called John McAndrew, I didn't realise is the head of BBC News Broadcasting. He was poached back from GB News. He was the anti-woke leader of GB News, is now the guy in charge of BBC News Broadcasting. Well, that explains a lot. Then there's a guy called Erin Gordon, who was Piers Morgan and Talk TV guy, is in charge of the London BBC News Broadcasting, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, so now I'm understanding what's good. So if you are centre-left in the UK or left-wing or even centrist, right, you are not getting the mainstream media supporting you. They're hypercritical of the Labour government at the moment. Now, you can say the Labour government are making this mistake or doing this, but the amount of of vitriol and criticism is quite amazing in all of our media spaces at the moment. And then you go to the social media spaces, and we know that there have been investigations in the US and in Germany, and now we've got one from Sky News in the UK to show with scientific like evidence, with actual data, empirical data, that Twitter is skewed vastly to the right wing. But then you've got Facebook and its algorithm. You've got Mark Zuckerberg wanting to copy Twitter's way of doing things, and they've both stripped out moderators. You've got then Zuckerberg owns like Threads and WhatsApp, and you've got this focusing, you've got this distillation of all these social media platforms into very few massive oligarchs. And then in America, we can talk about CNN looking like it's going to be bought, Warner Bros. Being bought out by Paramount, who now owns CBS and is skewing CBS to the right by putting Barry Weiss in charge of there. And you've got Fox News, just massive, and so on and so forth. And ABC being like, and CBS being taken to court by Trump, as well as the Wall Street Journal and New York Times being taken to court. So the control of the media and then the skewing to the right is a very, very big thing. Now, if you sit on the right and you listen to me going, oh God, he's going on. No, honestly, imagine sitting on the left, right, and looking at what is going on with the media. You may love it because it's supporting your side of things, right? So if you're listening to me now and you're centre right, particularly in the UK, and you've heard me say all this, you're loving it because this is supporting you. But it is skewed and the data is there. You look at all the, just on the BBC, and many people on the right claim the BBC is liberal lefty. And I keep saying this, the BBC is not liberal lefty in its political analysis and news. You might look at it and say there are black people and there are gay people and there are Asian people on these shows. And I think that's all woke. There's too many people of color on these shows. And I think it's not representative of white people enough, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's to do with, making dramas and making this and that. Go and look at the news broadcasting. Who is in charge of all of the shows? Who are the political editors? Chris Mason, Nick Robinson, John Humphreys. All of these people are conservatives. Laura Kunzberg, Fiona Bruce, the list goes on and on. These people are known to be sitting on the right. Nick Robinson was the Conservative Party student chairman at Cambridge University or whatever it is. These are the political editors at the BBC. They're avowedly conservative. And so when you look at the political programming, it skews to the right as well. Anyway, it's just the way it is. Now, there's been this bit of research by Sky News on to Elon Musk's X, and it's well worth looking at where they've gone, and they've basically taken 9 different accounts. They start them from scratch, and they've seen where they go. And essentially, they massively skew to the right. There's a video that you can go watch as well that I put out the other day that goes through the whole thing and shows that there's like a 72% skew to the right. I think it is something along those lines. And just the data is not controversial anymore. It is just how it is. It's skewed to the right. There you go. So yeah. And that's also, no, you can't see that because I wasn't showing it, but there you go. There's a good video that you can go watch that summarizes the report that is also here. This should be linked in the description below. But essentially, it is overwhelmingly skewed to the right. And then we get this added extra level of distortion. So you've got Grok, which is the AI model that Elon Musk has created through XAI. And he's reprogrammed it a whole host of times and keeps reprogramming it to be more and more right-wing and authoritarian and pretty hideous, to the point where it called itself Mecha Hitler previously. Like, it literally is glorifying like Hitler and blah, blah, blah. So Pete Wishart, who is a Scottish MP, the other day has threatened to take it to court because Grok called him a, quote, grape, I use that as a euphemism, grape enabler. So Pete Wishart here says, what has happened here is totally shocking and appalling. Grok has already conceded that it has been defamatory. So when he challenged it, then Grok actually admitted it has been defamatory. I am fortunate that I have the agency to take them on. Imagine what they're doing to those who have no means to seek redress. So what's fascinating here is that, and you can go and see this, you can read about it, say in the Herald, Scottish newspaper. Pete Wishart is seeking legal advice after Grok grape enabler claim. Now we have a situation whereby, how does it work? I mean, there needs to be a test case here, but you might have it where this Scottish MP takes AI to court for defamation. Absolutely, yeah. And Kevin Force talks about this one. Elon Musk came out with just honestly just abject, horrific nonsense the other day. He's already talked about there needing to be a civil war, or there will be a civil war in the UK, and we need to stand up and fight and blah blah blah. Elon Musk said these lovely small towns in England, Scotland, and Ireland, they've been living their lives quietly. They're like hobbits. That whole quote though was like, the whole thing he said was absolutely just wrong. He's a wrong one. And we're getting to this point where, like, this isn't a House of Lords, our kind of upper house in Parliament.
Freedom of speech is a vital democratic right, but it is not without its limits. Elon Musk's remarks, particularly those which appeared to suggest the public resort to violence, were wholly inappropriate. We will always defend free expression, but never tolerate language that incites disorder.
While fully supporting my noble friend's comments about freedom of expression, sometimes people go a bit too far. Isn't it a fact that Elon Musk has posted that civil war is inevitable in this country, and he's also posted that the USA should liberate the people of Britain from their tyrannical government? My lords, what action can we take? I wondered how that would go down. But my lords, what action can we take about the use of social media which abuse the freedom of expression? Maybe we should declare him a persona non grata if he ever wanted to come to this country.
I'm grateful to my noble friend. Personally, I just ignore him. Personally. I mean, we had an election. We've had 400 plus Labour members of Parliament elected. I stand here because the people of Great Britain have chosen a Labour government. We have a duty to deliver what we can. The people of Great Britain will choose the next government in maybe 3.5, 4 years' time.
But the problem is the people of Great Britain are getting skewed by what they're reading in public play on social media, because people live online. Well, I do, you do, I know most of you do, because I hang out with you, right? I like to think I'm giving you at least some accurate information so that we are tooled up to be able to deal with the challenges of living online for so long. But an awful lot of people aren't, and I speak to them on a daily basis. I speak to extended family, and I speak to people I meet, and it is clear that they have taken on information that is woefully erroneous.
Not some billionaire foreigner. So I would suggest that he buys a book on the British Constitution out of his money, he reads it, he understands how we work, and he minds his own business.
Brilliant, I agree with that, but that is easier said than done. So that is, I bang on about this all the time, and I will continue to bang on about this because I think this is the biggest single threat to humanity going forward. I think things like climate change, the war in Ukraine, all these things are contingent on, like, our action around them is contingent on our information of these things. Like, if we don't have accurate information of the war in Ukraine, we don't have accurate information on climate change and climate science, and we don't have accurate information on whatever other topic it is, because we are being fed ideological garbage, then we are going to make erroneous decisions on those topics. Our action on any given topic is contingent upon our knowledge of those topics. So that's why I bang on about social media and media all the time, because we don't wake up in the morning with new information in our heads by magic. We get it from the places that we hang out. And if we hang out on social media, and if we hang out on GB News, we are invariably going to be fed absolute bollocks. And that is a challenge. It's a challenge to democracy. End of rant. Right, let's get a bit of Donny back in the house. Let's get a bit of levity back in by talking about this man, the great King Donald. So it's interesting, and I think there are claims that actually South Korea might be trolling with this because of the nature of this type of crown in South Korean culture or something. So I think it may be multi-layered here, but I can't remember. Anyway, they gave Donald Trump a crown as a gift. Where is Donald keeping the gold crown? The ideal gift to stoke his fantasy. Absolutely incredible that they just give him a big gold crown, and he loves it. No King's Day. There's a King's Day. Now, Jessica Tarlov, like I've told you before, you know, when you've got a conference of African leaders and Donald Trump, and two of the African leaders at the table offered Trump a golf course in their country, everyone knows how to leverage this man. Everyone knows what you need to do to get Donald Trump to do what you want him to do.
Well, this is a new tune for Donald Trump anyway about the third term. He does like to flirt with it. And, you know, Steve Bannon was doing an interview with The Economist. It wasn't like he was doing a live stream with Alex Jones. He was actually sitting down with The Economist, and he said he will be president again in 2028. There are lots of ways that they can do this. And the reporter interviewing him said, well, what about the 22nd Amendment? And he said, you know, we've got a plan. So Trump has demonstrated that he doesn't leave easily, I guess, when he lost a free and fair election in 2020. So I think there is reason to be concerned about that. But I want to focus on this Asia trip. The fact that our allies continue to have, I guess, gotten the memo that Donald Trump is only satiated, made happy, whatever it is, if you treat him like a toddler playing dress up and, you know, give him the crown that he wishes for, or have a merch stand for them. I think it's a really sad reflection of the state of our allyship across the world. We'll see what South Korea actually invests back into America, but they have been scared of Donald Trump and what he's been threatening since his first term, when he said, for instance, that he's going to remove 10,000 troops, take them out of South Korea, which obviously leaves them incredibly vulnerable.
People know, our allies know how to deal with him. She's right. Our allies have figured out the cheat code. Treat him like a toddler playing king, hand him a fake crown, and they'll trade away America's leverage for applause. The most fragile ego in politics masquerading as strength is the claim there. Now, Ron Filikowski says, Trump says we are preparing to invade Nigeria. Apparently, that's what voters said they wanted in the exit polls. This is absolutely incredible. We're going to do. I already told you about this and how it came about. But basically, you had an announcement on Trump's social that Nigeria better watch out or we're coming guns a-blazing, whatever he said. So threatening Nigeria because of the way that Christians are being treated over there. There's a lot of Islamic fundamentalism in the north of the country, and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, this is nothing new. It's been going on for decades, right? But apparently, the reason he said that on True Social, and the reason why he's just said this, is because he, as he does, watches Fox News. And there was a segment, just a normal international news segment, on the plight of Christians in Nigeria. And he watched that and then went to town. And now he's threatening to invade Nigeria. You're like, really? Like, is he not getting briefed? No, he's not. He's not taking briefs. I mean, that's the point. His briefing comes from whatever he hears on TV.
Things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about.
So, wow. I mean, he's threatening them.
We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about, and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns are blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible, horrible atrocities. I'm hereby instructing our Department of War to prepare for possible action. If we attack, it will be fast, vicious, and sweet, just like the terrorist thugs attack our cherished Christians. These are we're going to.
So I went to the pub a couple of weeks ago with my mates, and one of my mates is very similar to me in terms of political ideology. And he said, look, I know this is controversial, but the one thing about Trump that's good is that he's a bit of a peacemaker. And I was like, dude, he's absolutely not. Like, he may have said that, and he may have been elected well, he wasn't, is inflation and so on and so forth. But the idea that he was actually a peacemaker, and he hasn't solved 8 wars in 8 months, and B, he will say these things, but he had to be stopped from invading, like blowing up Iran in Trump 1.0. And actually, if you look at what's happened in the Caribbean, he's blowing up boats in the Caribbean illegally. He's just blown up another one in the last 24 hours. So what is that, 15, 16, 17 now that he's blown up? He's itching for a war with Venezuela so he can get hold of their oil, and maybe Guyana's. I mean, they are, honestly, the American military is on tenterhooks in the Caribbean. And he is up for going to war with Nigeria. So I said to my mate, honestly, you like, we agree on virtually everything, but on this, you are wrong. He is not interested. And when he says he wants to stop wars, he wants to stop wars not because of the people there. For Ukraine, he doesn't want to stop the Ukraine war for the people of Ukraine in order that they get just and lasting peace, because they've been horrendously oppressed by the invading aggressors in the form of the imperialistic Russian army. No, he just wants to do a trade deal with Russia and extract as much minerals out of Ukraine as he possibly freaking can. The guy doesn't give a shit about human life. So yeah, he is as much a warmonger as anyone, I would argue. Like, and I said to my mate as well, who's like big on Palestine, I was like, dude, he's just been giving the Israeli army, the IDF, all the weapons he can possibly get to them so that they can continue a genocide in Palestine. That's not a peacemaker. The guy, he wants to build a freaking Riviera on Gaza. Like, guy's not interested in peace. For, you know, as someone, you know, not in terms, it's all about extrinsic values. It's not the value of peace itself. It's what peace can give to Trump, which is trade deals. That's what he wants. He wants money and power. Money and power. Money and power. 100%. Anyway, that's my rants. Right. I've been banging on for too long and I haven't got on to my American stuff. So let's do this really quickly. I just want you to be aware of something Donald Trump said, which I find fascinating insight here. And this may go places. A lot of people have been talking about this. This is what Donald Trump said just before they went closed doors. This is when he was speaking to senators about the disastrous elections the other day. This is a breakfast with senators, and then it went closed doors after this.
I put a 100% tariff on China. As soon as I heard it, within 20 minutes, I put a 100% tariff on China. When President Xi, who's really a friend of mine, as much as he can be a friend, he's a tough man. He's a tough man. Smart man, actually. Very smart. The press doesn't like it when I call him very smart. You know, they think I'm not supposed to call him smart. But he leads 1.4 billion people without question. In fact, during the meeting, we were there. A couple of you were there, and some of you saw it. So he's here, and he's got about 6 people on each side. And every one of those people was standing like this. They were at attention. And I made a comment to one of them, and I got no response. I said, are you going to answer me? I got no response. And President Xi didn't let him have any. So if there's any question, I said, I want my cabinet to behave like that. That's the way. I'm demanding that I want them sitting up like that, Tim, just nice and straight. I never saw posture like that. I've never seen men.
So first of all, before we go on to the next important bit, this is what he said about Kim Jong-un. I want my people to stand up straight when I'm talking. Like, he wants to be a dictator whereby everyone just does exactly what he says. Trump wants to be a dictator, but it's this next part that I find pretty interesting.
So scared in their lives. They have the equivalent of a vice president. He was. I said, "Are you going to answer my question?" And he's like, he doesn't move. I said, "What's wrong with this guy?" I will answer all questions. Why don't you behave like that? JD doesn't behave like that. JD buds into conversations. I want to have that for at least a couple of days, okay, JD? We'll keep you long term, but a couple of days of that would be very, very nice.
What Trump has just done, this is important. Trump has just publicly humiliated JD Vance by saying JD Vance and you could say this is all, it's just jokes and the sort of thing that you might say is jokes, but he's basically publicly said on national television, JD Vance keeps butting into conversations, and I'm going to make jokes about this so that all the senators are laughing at JD Vance. Now, JD Vance has also said something that intimates that Donald Trump is an idiot, because he said in one of his tweets something like, it is idiotic to overreact to these elections that happened on Tuesday and do X, Y, and Z, to which Trump did X, Y, and Z here. So there is an argument to say there might be a little bit of tension between JD Vance and Trump here. Now, Trump's having a bit of a joke, but he's having a joke at JD Vance's expense there. And I wonder whether, as Who's Poppin' here says, the cracks are showing, and I'm here for it. I mean, it might just be completely overreacting here, but there are a number of people who are pointing out that this incident here is actually a little bit more meaningful than you might otherwise think. And he is basically publicly ridiculing JD Vance, but also saying he butts into conversations. Now, here's a question for you, bit of homework for you guys. Who can remember a time when JD Vance butted into a conversation that Trump was involved in? I'm gonna wait to see who writes it first, and you get a prize. You get a prize if you can write it first in a live chat. Who can remember a conversation where JD Vance butted in, and it was a conversation that Trump was otherwise involved in, and it didn't go well, or at least not objectively? Yes, it was Zelensky. It was a Zelensky ambush. Goodness me, you've all got it. Mitch Ashton, no, you don't. Who wins that? My goodness, it is James Cowley. James Cowley, you win the legend of the day. You're only a legend for the day. I am legend in the multiverse, as we know this. So it's all time, forever. And of course, JD Vance did that at the ambush in the White House. And he must be known for that. Like, Trump is picking that. He says, I would just want 2 days where you don't do that. That's basically what he just said. So JD Vance is evidently always butting into conversations, important conversations. Trump has just said, I want my cabinet to just shut up and sit there with straight back. That's what they do for Xi Jinping. I want them to do that for me. I don't want JD Vance butting into every freaking conversation I have. Wow. This is like, oh, let's crack the popcorn out. And yeah, it's a really, really interesting insight. Anyway, like I always say, concentrate on the little things and they give you a window into much larger things. And I think that does that. So these elections on Tuesday, huge across the board. So you had something like a 15 percentage point win for, let's get this right. So you got Virginia and Abigail Spanberger, who is one of these NatSec Democrats. So moderate, who was former CIA. You've got the former Navy pilot Mikey Sherrill, won by 12 to 13 points in New Jersey, and people were expecting that to be close. And if it was going to be a 5 to 6 point win, it was going to be a blowout. 13 points, honestly, huge, absolutely massive. You had 20-point wins in both Public Service Committee elections for Georgia. These are just utility regulators that has been 5-0 to the Republicans for over 20 years. And you had 2 Democrats absolutely wipe the floor. And John Ossoff is a senator that's going to be running again for re-election in a Democratic senator in the midterms. This is a good sign for him, because that could be one that could be lost, right? And there's going to be a lot of money thrown at John Ossoff's Senate race. Honestly, mark my words. You got the Proposition 50 in California for gerrymandering. That won by, what was it, 30 percentage points? It's just a huge number, maybe more. I can't remember, just a lot. And then you had the Cincinnati mayor, which was big as well. Then you had Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and then you had the Pennsylvania, I think, Senate almost got a supermajority in the Pennsylvania Senate. The Democrats outperformed in every single district, region, election, everything about Tuesday. Tuesday was as good for the Democrats as it possibly realistically could have been. Because no one was predicting the blowout the size that it was, right? So point is incontestable that this was not amazing for the Democrats. Now, this should be a wake-up call for the Republicans and it does give them time. It gives them a year to get their ducks in a row here, because this was big. Huge movement in the formerly red suburbs of Greater Cincinnati tonight. School board flips, local city hall and township seats, judicial flips, all historic, flashing red light in what used to be the biggest GOP strongholds in Ohio. So now people are talking in terms of, and again, sorry to be boring about American politics, but like I've told you before, every 2 years, the representatives are up for election. So it means that between a presidential election every 4 years, so you've got Trump gets in, you've got the midterms in November 2026, 2 years after November 2024. You have every single House of representative up for election, and you have 1/3 of the senators up for election. And 1/3 of the senators that are up for election this time round it just so happens that the mix of senators here are bad for the Democrats. If they want to win the House of Representatives, it looks like at the moment on present polls that they should easily win the House of Representatives. If they want to win the Senate back, that's way more difficult, and they would have to first defend all of their own Senate seats that Democrats have, places like John Ossoff, people like John Ossoff in Georgia, and then they have to flip some of the Republican senators to the tune of, they'll need 4 senators to come over or something like that. So they need to flip, and the ones that are up for flipping are just difficult. So they might well get Maine off Susan Collins. They might well get Alaska off Lisa Murkowski from Mary Poltava, not Poltava, anyway, anyway, her in Alaska. So there are a bunch of options, and all of this is looking interesting. So Ohio being mentioned here is interesting, because I think Ohio is one of those places that could be up for grabs. And you're thinking, well, previously no chance, and now people are thinking, oh, the Democrats could win back the Senate. You look at this. You look at all of these districts and how much they went to the Democrats. Just these are red districts, some of these, and they've swung massively to the Democrats. In every single county in Virginia shifted blueward tonight. Every single county. Absolutely huge. This is one of the Georgia peeps here in that weird public services committee, those 2 elections there. Democrats flipped Morgan County in Georgia. It was Republican plus 47. It ended up being Democrat plus 3. It's a 56-point swing. Now, no, that's a 50-point swing. Sorry. Now, okay, that's only a very few votes, and that's easy to get an anomalous swing. But you get the point. There was an Asian district, like American Asian district, in one of these that showed something like a 99% swing, like a 99-point swing. Like it was something like minus 75 to plus 20 over here or something like that. Just an absolutely unheard of swing. It was that big. You had JD Vance's half brother was running for mayor of Cincinnati, and he got absolutely shellacked, which is, I think, great. Aftab Puraval, who is very popular, I think he's done a very good job. He's a very popular guy. Anyway, Corey Bowman is JD Vance's half brother. He was destroyed in that. So I suppose that's a good thing. Now you got, of course, New York City, the mayor, Mamdani, really considerable election there. Now he's your left-wing populist. He's being painted as a communist. He's not. The idea is that they're afraid of Mamdani. Why? Well, actually, they're afraid that he might do well. And if he does well, then it shows that left-wing populism can work. And if that can work, then that is a threat to Trump's right-wing populism.
Against it.
But a lot of Jews voted for him.
33%.
And a lot of Jews voted for him.
And that breaks my heart.
New Yorkers aren't dumb. They got to elect who they wanted to lead them. And if he fails, they will elect someone else.
He will fail. Socialism failed in the Soviet Union. It'll fail in New York City.
Well, we should all be rooting for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We should all be rooting for the city to succeed.
Socialism's not going to succeed in New York if you want it to look the way it is right now.
And that's the point. And it's become so partisan that you're like, we don't want our city that we live in to succeed. We don't want New York to succeed. Hang on, but you live here, assuming that these guys live in New York. I don't know, but it's that sort of thinking. Hang on, like, surely you want it to succeed? No, because he's not my guy. Yeah, but surely you want your politicians to succeed. No, we want this to fail. It's really important that this fails. And actually, Trump will pull out all the stops to make that fail. It's going to be interesting to keep an eye on what goes on there in New York. Someone talking about JD Vance and his wife. JD Vance's wife, well, apparently there are rumors that she's going to divorce him. There are rumors about JD Vance's marriage having gone south because he keeps saying things that are not very supportive of people of Asian descent, and that is his wife. He keeps saying things that are more aligned to white supremacy than his own wife. So anyway, there are rumors that they are on the verge of divorce, but I can't talk to the accuracy of that. Okay. Chris Murphy, brand new data. Republicans are blamed for the shutdown plus 12. This is what I was talking about earlier. And healthcare premiums going up plus 28. These are stunning numbers. Republicans aren't immune from the pressure this creates. Time to press our advantage, stand for what we believe in. Okay, that's more like partisan stuff. But the essential point here is that Republicans are getting blamed for the shutdown, and that is not good news. So when Trump was meeting with those senators, like, they need to work out a narrative of what's going on here. And they've got to come up with defeaters for what people were citing as the reason why they voted, the reason why Democrats did so well. Now, Trump can never blame himself. And that is a problem for Trump. So he can never go, well, actually, it might be me and my policy agenda. So he's like blaming the shutdown, blaming crappy candidates, blah, 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 blah. We'll come on to that in a second. I love this from Mamdani. So Zoran Mamdani, okay, you might not agree with his politics or whatever, but he is a canny operator. He knows how to use social media. He is basically the perfect antithesis to Donald Trump. He's kind of, he is the mirror, he's the negative of Donald Trump here from the left. And I love the way he just deals with Sky News here. This is just great. And it's just so refreshing and positive. He's known for always smiling and being positive, and here it shows.
First, I just have to say I've spent many days in my youth watching the transfer window close, final hours on Sky News, so it's a pleasure to have you here. Yeah, I'm an Arsenal fan. I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
So Sky News from the UK, now on the Sky platform, the cable platform, or satellite now cable platform, has Sky Sports, and Sky Sports run the English Premier League, and they're all to do with, like, the transfer window is this window within the Premier League where you can do transfers. There's several transfer windows. You can't transfer players in the Premier League outside of the transfer window. And so what happens is it gets down to the wire, and the last few hours of transfer window is a flurry of activity, and everyone's excited to see who's going to be transferred for however many million from Manchester City to Arsenal or whatever. And he's an Arsenal fan. And there are loads of great memes now, loads of threads about, I used to really like Zoran Mamdani, and now he's ruined it for me. He's a gooner, or whatever, all this kind of stuff. Or people saying, I didn't think I could love him even more until I found out he's an Arsenal. Anyway, the point is that, look, this is great. It's like, I've now forgotten what your question was because I was so excited you're from Sky News. This is lovely. This is positive. He's not having a go at people. He's not. This is just someone who knows, is comfortable in this media environment. And I just like that. I just thought that was quite insightful. Anyway, so the reaction from the Republicans, well, first of all, it was they rigged the elections.
The president posted on Truth Social that the voting underway.
So I'll read it for you. It'll be quicker. So the president posted on Truth Social that the voting underway in California is rigged. What evidence does he have of that? Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, says there's fraud in California's elections. It's just a fact. Reporter says, what's the evidence of that, though? She says, it's just a fact. If you want to deny that, I'm happy to provide you all the evidence. Yeah. That's what I'm asking for. Just ask for the evidence. You can't just say it's just a fact. But of course, like, the go-to is the elections were rigged. So they tried that one. I don't think they're going to get far with that at all. And then, we had talk about groceries, right? So he's saying he now knows that inflation is a big thing and you can't really ignore it. And I just want to play you this, and then we'll sort of get to the end.
Talk about the cost of Thanksgiving and the cost of living through Thanksgiving and enjoying Thanksgiving. For Joe Biden, it was 25% more than it is for me at a later time. Our energy costs are way down. Our groceries are way down. Everything is way down. And the press doesn't report it. The press reports whatever the con people say. You know, I call the Democrats con men and women. They make up numbers. But when you look at 25% reduction in costs for Thanksgiving between Biden and me, meaning this administration, that's a tremendous number. That's a tremendous. It's the biggest reduction in cost in the history of that chart or whatever it is they do. That they do a synopsis of everything. They cover every element of Thanksgiving meals. 25% down. So I don't want to hear about the affordability because right now we're much less.
I don't want to hear about the affordability. I don't want to hear about inflation anymore. I've told you, much less. Now, what's fun about this is that he just said that Biden people, Democrats, they just make up numbers. Then he comes up with, so basically, Walmart had the, like, if you're going to get a Thanksgiving meal, it costs this much. And then next year they do it, and now it costs this much. And this year they did it, and it says now this meal is 25% cheaper than it was last year. And that's what Trump's talking about. The problem here, though, is he doesn't tell you. Maybe he doesn't know. I assume he doesn't know, actually. But they changed the way they did their meal this year. They took something like 5 things out, and then they changed all the premium goods for Walmart's own brand cheap goods, right? And lo and behold, it's 25% cheaper. But he didn't tell you that. He's like, look, a meal is 25% cheaper this year than last year. It's unprecedented. No one's ever seen figures like this before. When I was told it, the man came to me, big man, tears in his eyes, he was crying. He said, sir, Walmart's meals are now 25% cheaper. I said, oh, you're a good man. Complete bollocks, right? So he's comparing apples to pears. This is just bastardizing how you deal with statistics and numbers, and it's just typical Trump. But he's essentially either lying or, you know, he's not being put straight by his own aides. So it's just nothing about what Trump says is ever remotely factual, sadly enough. But there you go. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Republicans do with the election results from Tuesday. But yeah, I guess we'll see. And I've already shown you this: the executive orders going through the roof from Trump. And then we get on to the last thing I'm going to talk about, which is this. I find it's quite incredible. So he's got some guy from Novo Nordisk in the White House. I think this is a guy that ended up fainting. If you haven't seen it, watch the video and look at the pictures of the guy that's standing just behind Trump over here, who faints. And you've got RFK Jr. runs out the room. You've got Dr. Oz then goes and sorts him out because he's got medical background. Trump stands up and just freezes and looks forward. He doesn't care that someone's just collapsed behind. It's just staggering imagery that came out of that. Anyway, this is what he said about this guy from Novo Nordisk.
Novo Nordisk is in the middle of a potential $10 billion acquisition for a smaller obesity biotech. They might need your and the FTC's help to see that through. Do you have any issues with that, or Eli Lilly buying a smaller obesity biotech from an anti-competitive
Well, I don't
standpoint?
know. Do you want to talk about that? I'd like to hear it. Maybe you should give us a piece of the company, like I've been asking for.
So
Maybe you should give a piece of the company that I've been asking for. So you got people accusing Zoran Mandani, including Trump, of being a communist, and Trump is just taking pieces of companies for the government willy-nilly. He's asking for it here. Ha ha ha, it's all funny. No, I've already asked you for a piece of the company. Maybe if you give me that.
Give the United States a nice big chunk of the company.
So Novo Nordisk and Pfizer right now are in the middle of an acquisition dialogue and discussion.
It's you and Pfizer?
It's us and Pfizer.
Competing for the company?
Competing for the company.
Who's winning?
And as of today, our bid is higher. And our message to Pfizer is that if they would like to buy the company, then put your hand in the pocket and bid higher. It's a free market.
But is it a free market? Because let's have a look at a couple of things that Trump has done. So let's lay them out then. Somebody says here, on Friday, I wrote about Trump's administration's latest foray into National Socialism. Trump wants to build nuclear power plants. He has chosen Westinghouse to build them. He will pay Westinghouse $80 billion for the project. In return, he has compelled Westinghouse to pay Him, I mean, the government, 20% of any cash distributions. Between now and the end of January 2029, the government can compel Westinghouse to go public via an IPO, at which point the government will be awarded 20% ownership of the company, likely making it the single largest shareholder. This is literally seizing the means of production, but to, you know, make America great again or something. Other of Trump's national socialist policies include refusing to enforce the 2024 law requiring the sale of TikTok until he was able to compel the business be sold at an extortionately discounted price to his political allies, creating a golden share of US steel for his government, requiring Nvidia and AMD to pay the government 15% of all revenues from chip sales to China, not profits, revenues, acquiring a 10% ownership of the chip maker Intel, acquiring a 15% stake in rare earth producers MP Materials, a 10% stake in Lithium Americas Core, and a 10% stake in Trilogy Metals Inc., creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve and digital asset stockpile, taking steps to create a sovereign wealth fund to be used as a vehicle for government investment. He has demanded that Microsoft fire an executive he does not like, and demanded that private law firms commit to doing pro bono work on behalf of the clients he chooses for them. So while some of these things you might think are good things for the United States, and I'm not denying that, like I don't mind public ownership, but forced public ownership like this seems to be rather against free market ideals. There is no way that Donald Trump is a free market capitalist in the way that the Republican Party used to expound, right? This guy is advocating socialist, communist almost moves here, and he has the audacity, and his team does, and the GOP does, the audacity to call Zoran Mamdani a communist when the American government is doing all of those things. It's quite incredible. And it's not so much that any one of those things is wrong or bad, although I think you can argue all of that, but it's just the double standards. It's the rank hypocrisy that gets me. Just absolutely, they're just tone deaf. And there you go. That's enough from me. I've spoken for too long. My missus has got back now. I'm going to be in trouble. I probably haven't done enough housework. And I've been speaking to you for too long. I would like to say to you, thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin Forst. You are a total legend. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to Niels Clement for really great kindness. I really appreciate that, Niels. Thank you amazingly, inordinately, and other adjectives or adverbs, actually. F. Oink, some Hungarian love. Get yourself a Save Doris t-shirt. I should think about that, actually. I should think about that. Benny, we might have to get onto that. Thank you, F. Oink, you total legend. Julian Rossiter, do you think that DJT could become the millstone around the neck of the GOP? Already seeing people like MTG coming out and being markedly less loony. Interesting times, I think, are ahead. Oh, Julian, that's a topic for a whole separate video. Such a good question. Right. If you go and look on YouTube now, you will see videos talking about this being a turning point. Those elections and what's going on now, he has lost his shine, his mojo, his, I don't know. Now, Anthony Scaramucci's talked about this quite a lot, which is, you know, it's all down here. The problem for Trump is if he's not going to run again, or if he's not going to continue to have power in 2028, he is effectively a lame duck president. So it's all about, okay, we're over that now. We need to look at the next thing. And the Republican Party have been doing that. But the problem is there isn't a viable next thing, which is why there's a lot of people going, or maybe we need to keep Trump for another term. Because, you know, well, then it's JD Vance. Well, he's not going to get in. Or it's this person. No, that person, no. Trump is the only person that has that kind of charismatic appeal that where he can have a set of absolutely horrific policies and still have most of the Republican Party backing for it. Any other president that tried to do the things he's done would have been absolutely annihilated. Now, he has been annihilated at the polls because the Democrats are mobilized. You mobilize the Democrats, that's what happens. Tuesday is what happens. So those midterm elections are going to look very, very interesting because if Trump does things that doesn't energize the electorate, that are really positive, that gets them or scare them to the point where they get off the sofa, you're going to find a lot of Democrats will come out and vote and a lot of Republicans will stay home. That is the threat to the Republicans in 2026. And there are many, many people saying this is the point. This week is the start of Donald Trump's decline. So I think that is probably correct. I think it's actually, this is the formalization of that, but it's actually been happening for a couple of months now. When you see Republicans actually upset of how ICE is treating immigrants, these people want to get rid of all the immigrants as voters, and yet ICE is doing it in really horrific ways. So that he's even underwater on immigration now. He's in trouble. So therefore, for him, what does he do? He and the people around him, people like Stephen Miller, realize that if they want to get anything achieved, they have to do it through executive orders and through, trying to get the unified executive theory even more robustly, successfully, I don't know, input or whatever. I can't think of the verb. Basically, Trump needs to do things by individual personal fiat at the moment because he hasn't got the Congress. And I think you're starting to see Republican congressmen and women start to feel okay about coming out against him. And as Julian says here, if Marjorie Taylor Greene is a barometer, if she's out there starting to be critical of, at the moment, the Republican Party, you are going to see more and more of that take place, I think. And this could be the turning point. So that's a really good question, Julian. Okay. Mitch Ashdown says, I figure that the Trump unit is only the art of grift on steroids and cocaine. Everything about it. I think historians will look back on Trump 2.0 and it was the same in Trump 1.0, but now it's gone off the charts. This is about grift. It's about family grift, and it's about corruption, and it's about power and money, and his family. My goodness. So also about what needs to be understood about the midterm elections is if they lose the House, if the Republicans lose the House to the Democrats, that's where you start getting loads of investigations because the House of Representatives are the ones that do investigations predominantly. And so there are theories that, impeachment, investigations, his family could be up. Steve Bannon said the other day, if they win, there are a lot of us are going to be in prison and I'm going to be one of them. Steve Bannon literally said that on stage. He says, I will be one of them in prison. Now, they had said that about this election, but actually the Republicans, Trump got voted in. But, it's going to be interesting to see whether Democrats will try and seek revenge, or it's not even revenge, it's justice, actually, for what has been going on. Thank you for the kind words. Tomash here saying the information you bring us, Jonathan, is very valuable. Thank you. Sometimes I do feel like a 24-hour news channel. ATP News 24. Smith says I like the sound of that. But yeah, the problem is I can just talk 24/7. ATP News 24 with German Untertitel. I was laughing about. I was going to make some joke that was just really inappropriate, so I won't now, because I'm more mature than that. Okay. Thank you very much for all of your support. Thanks for Benny Pie for helping out there. Thank you for War of 1812. Really, really do appreciate your support there, gifting 10 ATP Geopolitics memberships. That is very, very kind. Just seeing if there are any more. Benny Pie, you could be a roving reporter. I don't think Doris has got the mobility anymore to do it for me. Roving reporter, that is. So anyway, thank you very much. That's enough of me banging on. I do appreciate these times we spend together, and I know I do them sort of too often, I think, on a daily basis, but there is a wonderful community here, and I don't thank you enough for being a wonderful community, and moderators help with that. I have a feeling, and this may be a little bit, I have delusions of my own grandeur, or not my own, but this channel. But the community in these live threads, and when I do these lives, is really good, and I am really thankful to the mods and for you guys for being here. And there aren't many other YouTube channels that I'm sure have as good a bunch of people as you guys. We are going to do a new fundraiser. People are asking for it. I've been contacted today, and it is going to be a fundraiser for a quad bike for the 80th regiment unit. I don't know, a battalion. And I may well get on one of the guys from there to talk about it as well. So that will be imminently in place. Just give me some time. But yeah, just big love to all of you. You guys are awesome. Thank you. And thanks to Betty as well for being here too. Toodle pips, Toulemond. Go and do something outdoors now. Just go and, I don't know, make yourself a cup of tea, a good cup of Yorkshire tea, take it outdoors and just breathe in the fresh air. And take care. I'll speak to you soon.